Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. It was supposed to be a normal Tuesday. I had just finished my second building of the day, a 50-story glass tower downtown. The sun was high, the sky was clear, and the wind was manageable. Perfect conditions for window cleaning. I was on the 20th floor of the Eclipse building, just one more panel to wipe down before taking a break. The rig I was strapped into swayed gently with each movement. I'd done this for years, and the heights didn't bother me anymore. I had my earbuds in, my music low, and the scent of cleaning solution mixed with fresh air. Everything felt routine, until it didn't. The first sign something was wrong came from the ground below. I saw a crowd gathering on the street, way more than usual for mid-morning. People weren't just standing around either. They were running, stumbling. Some were falling, then not getting back up. I pulled out one earbud and narrowed my eyes. I couldn't hear much from up there, but I saw enough. A man tackled a woman, but not in a way that made any sense. He latched onto her and didn't let go. She was screaming, or it looked like she was, and people around them started scattering. Then another person did the same thing, and another. I blinked. Was it some sort of stunt, a protest, a flash mob? But it didn't feel organized. It felt frantic, wild. People were fleeing in every direction. Some disappearing into buildings, others just collapsing in the street. I tried to call my buddy on the crew, Javier, who was working a few floors down on the north side of the building. No signal. I tried again. Still nothing. I reached for the radio clipped to my harness. "Javi, you seeing this?" I asked. No response. I pressed the button again, waited, then again. Static. Now, my pulse was picking up. I looked into windows of the floor I was working on. Offices, empty cubicles, a few laptops still open, chairs askew. I knocked on the glass just in case, trying to get someone's attention, but no one was inside. No one at all. That was strange. This floor was usually buzzing with people by this time. I swung to the next window, more of the same. Desks, coffee mugs, no people. The wind started to pick up a little. My rig creaked. I checked my harness and ropes again, twice. I wasn't taking any chances. Then I heard the first scream from above, not on the ground, above me. I looked up and saw a figure standing on the roof. For a second, I thought they were just looking over the edge. Then they jumped. My stomach dropped. The person fell fast, like a rag doll. I heard a thud, even from 20 stories up. I jerked my head down. The body hit a car and rolled off, motionless. I gripped the side of the rig, breath coming faster. What was happening? That's when I saw Javier's rig swing out around the corner. "Javi!" I shouted. He was leaning out awkwardly, waving one arm. He looked pale. Really pale. There was something dark smeared across his uniform. Blood? Paint? "Help!" he croaked through the radio, static breaking his words. "They're inside." Before I could respond, he convulsed and dropped to his knees on the platform. His head hit the side railing and he didn't get up. Then, slowly, he did. But something was wrong. He was moving like he didn't know how to use his own body. His eyes stared right through me. He stumbled forward and fell off the platform. I gasped. He didn't scream, he didn't even react, just fell. I couldn't move, couldn't think. My friend was gone in seconds. Then I heard pounding on the windows right beside me. I whipped around. 3 people were inside, slamming their fists against the glass like they wanted out. No, like they wanted me. Their faces, I can't describe them. Pale, distorted, smeared with what looked like dried blood. Their eyes were glazed over. One of them opened his mouth and smacked it against the window like an animal. I pushed back against the rig, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. That's when I realized I couldn't go up. I couldn't go down. I was stuck, alone. 20 floors above a city losing its mind. And the clock had just started ticking. For a while, I just held onto the ropes and tried to breathe. My fingers were locked around the harness clips, knuckles white. I could still see Javier in my head, his face, the way he moved before he fell. That wasn't him, not really. I glanced back at the glass. The people inside were gone. But smeared across the window was a trail of something red, as if someone had pressed their face and dragged it down before disappearing. I didn't want to look anymore. I steadied myself and forced my hands to move. Focus, I told myself. Think. My phone still had no signal. The radio gave nothing but static. I was stuck 20 floors up, hanging on the outside of a skyscraper while something terrible swept through the city below. A gust of wind reminded me of where I was. One wrong move and I'd end up just like Javier. Or worse. I couldn't stay in the open forever. I looked up. The roof was still at least 10 floors above. Down wasn't an option either, not with the chaos on the street. From here, I could see overturned cars, broken glass, and trails of movement like ants spilling from a kicked nest. People, no, not people anymore, were swarming every direction. I had to get inside, somewhere safe. I began checking each window I passed. Locked, another locked. I tried tapping, hoping maybe someone would see me and open up. At the fourth one, I saw a woman peeking out from behind a cubicle. She had blood on her shirt but didn't look injured. Her eyes locked onto mine through the glass. I waved at her frantically, mouthing, "Let me in." She hesitated, looked behind her, then disappeared. No, come back," I tapped harder. A few seconds later, the window clicked open a few inches. "Get in, quick," she whispered, holding it open just enough for me to slip through. I shuffled across the platform, steadied my rig, and slowly climbed into the office. I barely got one foot in before she slammed the window shut and locked it again. She looked at me, breathing hard. "You're lucky I saw you. Most of the floor's empty. They either ran or—" Her voice trailed off. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. The office was dim. Someone had killed the main lights, and only the faint glow from computer screens lit the room. I unhooked my harness and took a few steps forward, feeling the carpet under my boots. It was surreal. Just a few minutes ago, I was dangling over the edge of this very floor. "Name's Taylor," she said. "I was in a meeting when it started. Next thing I knew, someone on our floor started attacking people, biting, screaming. I ran and hid in the break room until it got quiet." I nodded. "Luis. I was on the rig when it all kicked off. My partner, he didn't make it." She looked away. "I'm sorry." We both stood there for a second, trying to figure out what came next. "You seen anyone else?" I asked. "Not here," she said, "but there's something upstairs. I heard thumping earlier. It moved down the hall and stopped. Could have been one of them. Could have been someone hiding. I don't know what's going on, but it's spreading fast. No signal either," she added. "Tried calling 911, nothing." I checked my phone again. One bar flickered, then vanished. "They've got to be doing something," I said. "The authorities, the military, someone has to be." A loud bang cut through the silence. Not from outside, from the hall. Taylor and I froze. Footsteps. Slow. Dragging. We crept toward the conference room door, and peeked through the narrow window. Something moved past, brushing the wall with its shoulder. It was wearing a security guard uniform, one shoe missing, one arm limp and swinging unnaturally. It groaned, low and rattling, like someone exhaling through shattered ribs. Taylor clapped her hand over her mouth. The thing paused, tilted its head, then kept going. We backed away, barely breathing. "I don't think they can see well," I whispered. "Maybe sound and movement." "Whatever it is," she whispered back, "it used to be people." We barricaded the door with a chair and a filing cabinet, just in case. Then we found a desk to crouch behind, and that's where we stayed for a while. Every so often, we'd hear another noise. A groan. A scream from another floor. Something shattering. Something pounding against metal. Whatever was happening, it wasn't stopping. It was growing. And we were still trapped. We stayed hidden for what felt like an hour, maybe more. The office around us was dead quiet, aside from the occasional creaks of the building settling or a faint groan echoing from down the hall. I kept waiting for the lights to cut out or for the fire alarm to start blaring, but nothing happened. Taylor was pacing now. "We can't stay here. We don't know how many of them are in the building." I nodded slowly. "We need to find a way down, a real exit, or get to the roof. If the elevators are down, then it's the stairs." That idea sat between us like a dare. Taylor peeked out into the hallway again, then gestured for me to follow. We crept toward the stairwell, quiet as possible. I was hyper-aware of every sound, our footsteps on the carpet, the distant wail of a siren far below, even my own heartbeat thudding against my ribs. The door to the stairwell was propped open an inch. I hated that. Taylor gently nudged it open and peeked inside. Clear. The stairwell echoed as we stepped in, the kind of silence that made every footfall feel like a shout. We started down slowly, one floor at a time, ears straining for any noise. When we reached the 18th floor landing, we heard something. Voices. I grabbed her arm. We stopped. One was whispering. The other sounded like it was weeping. "Could be survivors," I whispered. "Could be a trap." We paused at the door. Taylor raised her hand, knocked lightly, 3 soft taps. Silence. Then, "Who's there?" a voice asked, shaky, scared. "People," I replied. "We're not sick. We're coming from upstairs." More silence. Then the lock clicked and the door opened an inch. A man peeked out, pale and sweating. He opened the door wider when he saw us. Inside were 3 people, 2 men and a woman. They had barricaded themselves into a supply room using chairs and office cabinets. One of them had a crowbar, and the other held a fire extinguisher like it was a weapon. "You alone?" the man asked. I nodded. There were others, but not anymore. The woman, sitting on the floor, was rocking slightly. She had dried blood on her sleeve. Not hers, thankfully. "Have you seen them?" she asked. "The way they move?" "Yeah," Taylor replied. "It's like they're not people anymore." "They're not," one of the guys said, dead serious. "My boss came at me during a meeting. Bit my coworker's hand just like that, no warning." "Did your coworker make it?" I asked. He didn't answer. That was enough. We talked for a few minutes, mostly trading what little we knew. Nobody had gotten a call through. The internet was still up, but glitchy, nothing useful. News headlines were vague and short. Mass outbreak, emergency in progress, stay indoors. Helpful, right? Then we heard it again. The dragging footsteps, not close, but close enough. They were coming down the stairs. And worse, we heard more than one. I quietly shut the door and backed away. "We need to move," Taylor said. "Now." The group hesitated. "We'll slow you down," the woman whispered. "We're staying." "No," I said firmly. "If you stay, you'll be cornered." But they wouldn't budge. So, Taylor and I left, exchanging one last glance with them as we stepped back into the stairwell. This time, we headed up. We didn't talk as we moved. There were more of them now. We could hear the sounds from other floors. A distant banging, screeching metal, muffled shouts that ended too fast. By the time we reached the 23rd floor, Taylor was out of breath, and my legs felt like concrete. We paused, leaning against the wall. "What's on this floor?" I asked. She caught her breath. Server room, maintenance, a couple of exec offices. "Could be quiet, let's check." We slipped inside. The hallway was dim. Emergency lights were flickering above the doors. Everything smelled like dust and burnt wires. The floor was deserted. We moved carefully, checking rooms one by one. Most were locked or empty. Then we reached a break room and hit gold. Snacks, water. First aid kit in the wall. We closed the door and locked it, using a chair to jam the handle. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. For the first time in hours, I felt a tiny sliver of hope. We had a place to breathe. For now. But the silence outside the door didn't feel peaceful. It felt like something was listening. Waiting. We stayed in that break room for maybe half an hour, could have been more. The vending machine gave us stale chips and warm soda, and that tasted like a feast compared to the tension outside. Taylor was sitting near the door, flipping through local channels on her phone. The signal flickered in and out, but she finally pulled up a news feed. Low quality, grainy, but real. It showed a newscaster sitting behind a desk, clearly trying to stay calm. The words scrolling across the bottom of the screen chilled me. Unknown outbreak continues. CDC recommends sheltering in place. Avoid contact with infected individuals. Do not approach aggressive behavior. Behind the anchor, someone was yelling off camera. The screen cut to static. "That's it," Taylor muttered. "No answers, no help. Just wait and hope it passes." I stood by the window, looking down 23 stories. Fires burned on a few rooftops. The streets below were clogged with crashed cars like a traffic jam frozen in place. Movement flashed between shadows. Those things still wandered, even hours in. And no sirens, no helicopters, no rescue. I started thinking about the people who stayed on the 18th floor. How we left them behind. Were they still alive? Or had those sounds in the stairwell caught up to them? "Do you think this is happening everywhere?" I asked. Taylor didn't answer right away. I think we're lucky to still be asking questions. She was right. Whatever this was, it moved fast. And the worst part, nobody seemed to know how it started. We tried resting in shifts. I took the first watch, sitting near the door while Taylor leaned back in a plastic chair with her arms crossed and eyes half closed. She didn't fully sleep, neither did I. The building groaned every so often, just metal settling. But it made me jump each time. Then, around what must have been 3 a.m., the lights flickered once, twice, and died. Total darkness. My breath caught. "Taylor?" "Still here," she whispered. "Power's gone." We used our phones for light, but kept them dim. No way to know who or what might see through the crack under the door. The darkness seemed heavier now, like it was pressing in, watching. That was when we heard it again. Not footsteps, knocking. 1, 2, 3 soft knocks. Taylor looked at me. "That's not them. They don't knock." We froze. The knock came again. 4 times this time, closer, louder. "Who's there?" I called. Silence. Taylor crept up to the door and peered through the peephole. "Do you see anyone?" I whispered. She stepped back slowly. Her face had gone pale. There's a man standing there, wearing a business suit, his head's tilted too far, his eyes. What? They're wrong, like glass marbles. The knocking turned into scratching. Slow, rhythmic, like fingernails dragging down wood. It was just on the other side. We didn't move, barely breathed. The scratching stopped, then footsteps, fading, gone. Taylor collapsed into the chair again, hand shaking. It's like they're learning. That thought sat in my stomach like a stone. Were they evolving? Trying to imitate us? "Maybe we should head for the roof," I whispered. "Get above it all. Signal someone." Taylor nodded. But not until sunrise. Moving in the dark's too risky. We waited. Eventually, the first hints of dawn started glowing behind the clouds. And then we heard a sound we hadn't expected. A helicopter. It was faint, far off, but real. We both bolted to the window. Through the foggy glass we saw it, a black helicopter crossing over the skyline. It had a spotlight sweeping the tops of buildings. Taylor grabbed her phone and started flashing the screen. I waved a piece of silver foil from the vending machine, hoping to catch the light. The chopper kept flying. Didn't slow, didn't stop. "Maybe they didn't see us," I said. "Or maybe they did," she whispered, and kept going anyway. The weight of that hit us both. We were on our own. After the helicopter passed, we sat in silence for a while. I kept replaying the moment in my head, wondering if we should have made a bigger signal, if we missed our one shot. But Taylor just stared blankly out the window. Eventually, she stood. "Let's move. There might be something on the exec floor that can help us." That was the 25th, just 2 levels up. We grabbed what little we had, cracked the door, and listened. Nothing but distant wind whistling through the stairwell. The lights were still dead. We climbed with our phone screens dimmed low, scanning every shadow. Floor 24. Sealed tight. We kept going. The 25th floor had a heavy security door, but thankfully it was left slightly open. Someone had forced it. Inside, it felt like another world. Sleek furniture, polished floors, glass walls. Even in the emergency lights, the place gleamed. But it was empty. Too empty. Taylor moved ahead, checking offices one by one. We're looking for radios, maybe even backup power, anything. We found a locked server room. Behind it, backup batteries hummed quietly. There was still some power here, just enough to keep the servers alive. And in the corner, a security terminal still had juice. I tapped the screen. Live feeds blinked to life, grainy, low-res security cameras. Most were dark or frozen, but a few were still running. One showed the lobby. It was wrecked. Blood smeared across the floor. A few figures shuffled around, limping, heads twitching, arms swaying like broken puppets. Another camera showed the stairwell 2 floors below us. 4 of them were climbing up. Slow, steady. "We need to move, now," I said. Taylor pointed to a locked office labeled Director Marcus Vane. "Let's check in there. If he's important, he might have had something useful." The door was locked, but a fire axe was mounted on the wall nearby. A few swings, and the lock gave. Inside was a pristine office, huge desk, leather chairs, framed photos. A sleek laptop sat in a charging dock. Somehow, it was still running. Taylor opened the drawers while I checked the computer. No internet, I muttered, but he was keeping logs. I opened a document titled Emergency Comm Log Internal Only. It was brief, but chilling. Lockdown triggered at 10:12 a.m. Staff unaware. No alert broadcasted, HQ decision, too fast to control. Medical team never responded. Evac request denied, told to wait, told observe. They're watching this happen. Taylor looked over my shoulder. They knew. Worse, I said, they let it spread. In the drawer, she found a black case with an emergency flare and a radio. Dead, but maybe chargeable. We took it all and bolted back into the hall. The stairwell door groaned as we approached it. Something had brushed against the other side. I checked the camera feed again on the laptop we brought. The group was now on our floor. Right outside. We backed away, fast. Taylor looked toward the end of the hall. There. Executive balcony. It was glassed in, but a crash with the fire axe opened it up. We stepped out onto the narrow ledge. Wind howled against us, sharp and cold. The rooftop was just above, if we could get up there. We scanned for options. Then I saw it. A metal access ladder bolted along the outside wall. Just a few feet away, probably for maintenance. Only problem? It was 2 feet beyond reach. And to get there, we'd have to balance along a narrow ledge, 25 stories above ground. Taylor didn't hesitate. She passed me the pack with the flare and the laptop. I'll go first. If it holds me, it'll hold you. She stepped onto the ledge, arms spread, breathing slow. The wind pushed her hair across her face. One step at a time, she edged toward the ladder. My heart pounded. Then she reached it, grabbed on, climbed. "Your turn," she shouted. I followed. Every inch of that ledge felt like it might give way. The world below spun in my vision, but I forced my focus on the ladder. Hands shaking, I reached out, grabbed the cold metal, and climbed. We didn't speak until we both collapsed on the rooftop, gasping. The sky was streaked with smoke. The morning sun looked dull, barely cutting through the haze. But for the first time, we were above it all. The rooftop was wide, covered in vents, antennas, and gravel. It should have felt like a relief being above everything, but the silence was unnerving, too still for a city that had once been so loud. Taylor stood near the edge, scanning the skyline. Smoke curled from several buildings. Others flickered with firelight. It wasn't just this tower, the whole city was sinking. Think anyone else made it this far up? I asked. If they did, they're keeping quiet. We found a maintenance hatch near the center of the roof and pried it open. Inside was a small utility shed, barely bigger than a closet, but it had 2 old folding chairs, a stack of plastic-wrapped water bottles, and most importantly, a portable battery unit. Taylor grinned when she saw it. If we're lucky, we can charge the radio. We plugged it in. The red light blinked, charging. Then came the waiting. We sat outside in the sun, watching the sky. The wind carried the occasional distant sound, sirens, distant howls, even faint crashing. But no aircraft, no rescue. After about 30 minutes, the radio chirped to life. Taylor grabbed it. "This is Tower 15, rooftop, requesting any signal, over." We waited. The static dragged on. She tried again. "We're on the 25th floor rooftop, 2 survivors, please respond." Nothing. We both leaned in. The voice was male, winded. "Not safe below. Repeat. Rooftop only safe zone. Avoid streets. Infected drawn to sound. Don't use elevators. Extraction unknown. Stay low." "Do you have an evac time?" Taylor asked. The radio clicked off. Taylor stared at it. "At least now we know it's not just here." "They're calling them infected," I said. "Not gone, not dead." "They still feel something," she muttered. "We saw that one knock." It stayed with me. I didn't want to think about it, but it had been too precise, too deliberate. We stayed on the roof for another hour, watching, listening. Then we saw movement across the way. Another rooftop, maybe 3 buildings over. A figure, waving something reflective in the air. Taylor grabbed the flare gun. They see us. We waved back with a piece of foil. The figure kept signaling, short, sharp flashes. Taylor furrowed her brow. That's Morse code. You know Morse code? I asked, surprised. Basic stuff, my dad was Navy. The figure stopped flashing and pointed downward, then held up a sign. Black letters scribbled in thick marker. They climb. We both went cold. I turned and looked back at the edge of our rooftop. For the longest moment, nothing. Then a hand. Fingers, curled in gray, reached over the edge, followed by another. They were climbing. I grabbed the flare gun from Taylor, aimed toward the hand and fired. A burst of red light arced across the sky, and the figure fell. Screamed, vanished over the edge. More hands followed. 3, 4, 5. They were slow but coordinated, moving together. We ran to the far side of the roof toward the maintenance shed, locked the hatch tight and pushed heavy crates in front of it. Our hearts thundered in our ears. Taylor leaned against the door, panting. They weren't climbing earlier. They're learning, I said. That was the second time one of us said it. This time, I fully believed it. They're adapting. The sun was climbing higher, but it didn't matter. The day wasn't bringing safety, just longer hours to stay awake, to stay ready. We weren't above it anymore. Not really. And night would come again. We didn't sleep, couldn't. Every few minutes, we heard tapping on the hatch, sometimes scratching. Once, something heavy thudded against it hard enough to rattle the crates we'd stacked. But it held. Taylor and I sat in silence most of the time, barely speaking. When we did, it was in whispers. The radio stayed silent. No more voices, no static, just quiet, like the system had gone completely offline. Eventually, I asked, "Why do you think they're still coming up here?" Taylor gave me a look, tired and hollow. Because we're still making noise, breathing, talking. She held up the laptop. Even this thing probably lets off a hum. We decided to turn it off. Anything drawing attention wasn't worth it anymore. Then, right around noon, the rooftop turned quiet again. Too quiet. Taylor crept toward the hatch and pressed her ear to the metal. "They're gone," she whispered. We waited another 5 minutes just to be sure, then slowly moved the crates and cracked the hatch. Empty. I stepped outside first. The rooftop was still. Not a single hand on the ledge. We walked toward the edge and looked down. What we saw stopped us cold. They weren't gone. They were gathering. On a lower rooftop about 4 floors down, at least a dozen of them had assembled. Standing, staring, like they were waiting. But for what? "They're watching us," I muttered. Taylor shook her head. "No, that's not. They don't have that kind of awareness." But they weren't milling around. They weren't moaning or pacing, just waiting. And then one of them turned and walked inside into the building below. Then another followed. And another, like they'd been told to move. "They're planning," I said. Taylor didn't argue. We backed away from the ledge and returned to the center of the roof. That's when we spotted something we hadn't noticed before. Another access point. A vent system large enough for someone to crawl through. Taylor checked it. Goes down at an angle. Might lead to another floor. We debated it, but not long. staying up here with thinking. Climbing creatures wasn't survival. It was waiting to be caught. So we went in. It was tight, cramped, hot, but it led somewhere. After crawling for what felt like forever, we dropped into a maintenance hallway behind the 22nd floor. Quiet, empty. We snuck down the hall, checking every corner. Then we saw a light. One of the offices had been turned into a makeshift camp. Flashlights, a folded map, a small burner, a pack of instant food. And a note, ours scrawled across a torn piece of paper. Don't use the main stairs, they bait them with sound. Elevator shaft is safer. Go to B2. Service tunnel still clear. Taylor looked up at me. Someone else figured out a way out. We followed the instructions, avoided the stairs, found the elevator shaft. The power was gone, but the maintenance ladder ran all the way down. I took one last look at the city skyline through a cracked window. The smoke was heavier now. Helicopters were gone. No more sirens. No more hope of rescue. Just survival. Taylor went first. One rung at a time, we began our descent into the dark. The ladder groaned under our weight as we climbed. The only sound was our breath and the faint creak of steel echoing through the dark shaft. We passed floor after floor. Most doors were jammed shut. A few had blood streaks across them. I didn't stop to think about what happened behind those doors. We reached the basement, level B2. Taylor slid the door open just enough to peek. All clear, she whispered. We stepped into a dim corridor lined with concrete. This was where the service tunnels began. Maintenance passages, supply routes, and hidden hallways most people never saw. The air smelled like dust and mildew. Lights flickered overhead. We moved fast but quiet, sticking to corners, listening at every turn. It was eerie, like the world above had collapsed, but this place hadn't realized it yet. Nothing moved, no distant howls, no scraping. We passed storage closets filled with old equipment, a locked security room with shattered glass, and, finally, an access tunnel leading out under the city. A maintenance map was taped to the wall. Taylor traced the path with her finger. This one leads to the substation near the river, she said. If we make it there, we might find vehicles, or other survivors. We followed the tunnel. It went on for blocks, sometimes dipping lower, sometimes squeezing tight. Rats scattered in front of us. Pipes hissed with old steam, but still no infected. Until we reached the gate, it was open, and blood stained the floor beyond it. Taylor crouched low, scanning ahead. Looks recent. We kept going, quiet as shadows. Then we heard it. A sound I'll never forget. Breathing. Not ours. Not natural. It was wheezy, strained, like something mimicking the sound of a person but not quite getting it right. I looked at Taylor. She nodded once and drew the utility knife we'd taken from the rooftop shed. Around the next corner, a light flickered, and it stood there, one of them. But this one was different. It was wearing a maintenance uniform. Its head tilted slightly, studying us, not rushing, not snarling, waiting. Taylor whispered, "It's smart." We backed up slowly. The thing didn't move, it just followed, step by step, quiet, patient. Taylor pointed behind us. "Split, circle around, distract it. Are you sure? No time, go." I turned and ran down the left tunnel. My boots splashed through shallow water. I didn't look back, I didn't have to. I heard the thing change course, its footsteps suddenly picking up speed. It was after me now. I ducked through an old rusted door and slammed it shut, held my breath, waited. Nothing. The air was still again. I moved down the passage until I found another junction. and there was Taylor waiting, smudged with dirt, but alive. We didn't say a word, just kept moving. The tunnel ended at a drainage outlet beneath the city. The grate had been cut clean through. Someone else had come this way, and recently. We climbed out into the gray light of early evening. The river was ahead. Across it, more smoke, but also faint music carried by the breeze. Not from a radio, live. A guitar, maybe. People. Somewhere out there. Were others. Alive. We followed the sound. The city wasn't safe, not yet, maybe not ever. But we weren't dead, we weren't infected. We had each other. And after 12 hours of terror, that was enough. For now. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.